Adam, how long has Suella got?
I think she's got at least till Wednesday, because the Prime Minister has very good reasons for saying he's not going to take a decision. Clearly, there's tension over what's going to happen on Saturday, on Armistice Day, with the two events taking place. And were things to go wrong, I think a lot of people would feel that Suella Braverman had been borne out. And then there is this crucial judgment on migrants and the use of Rwanda as a possible place to send them. The Supreme Court is ruling on Wednesday. And were that to go in Suella Braverman's way, since she's been the pioneer of that policy, I think in political terms it wouldn't be great necessarily to get rid of her. So I think he can afford to deliberate for the next 5 days or so, and that will probably play as well into his image as to someone who acts judiciously and cautiously and isn't rushed or stampeded by the media or indeed his own party one way or the other.
And the issue also, you know, if she were to go today, just at the weekend, you know, a weekend before the pro-Palestine marches, a weekend before Remembrance Sunday, it'd be kind of odd to have no Home Secretary in place or a brand new replacement trying to get to grips with the brief when so much could potentially go wrong. What about you, Annabel? How long I'm going to go to the lady in the middle. What about you, Annabel? How long do you think?
I think Rishi Sunak is clearly in an impossible situation now, because I appreciate Adam's comments, but by failing to act more swiftly, it will look, if he does sack her, like he's done so because he's buckling to pressure, not just from within his own party, but from the opposition as well. I also happen to think, now I know I'm in a minority here, that Suella is quite politically useful to Rishi Sunak. She says and does things that he as Prime Minister cannot. And you can argue whether the Home Secretary is the right person to assuage what I believe is a large contingent of the British public who are appalled by what they're seeing on the streets, who are very concerned about immigration and the fact that they worry multiculturalism hasn't worked. And perhaps she's not the right person to say these things, but if somebody doesn't, then those people are going to feel like their voices are not being heard. So I think that Rishi Sunak ought to keep Suella on side. She's arguably less dangerous within the tent than she would be outside, and he may well face a full-scale revolt from within his party if he does sack her.
So here's the conversation that will be going on in number 10 right at this moment, Kevin, and will have been going on over the last couple of days. There are a group of people around the Prime Minister who absolutely want her gone. And they will be Dougie Smith, Michael Gove, Dominic Cummings, who's still there from the outside, and a small number of others. And the people who will be pushing back against that, for the very reasons you say, Annabel, will be the Prime Minister himself and James Forsyth, his political secretary, who's kind of like fairly new in post. They will be considering the points that Annabel has raised, but the points that the others will be working on is they want Suella gone the same way they wanted Ben Wallace gone and Dominic Raab gone, because she is an obstacle to the person they want to take over from Rishi Sunak. So how long do you think she'll last, Kevin?
I think, Nadine, it's wider and deeper than that, and there's just a schism in the government. And we see it. The question is, does Braverman,
number 10.
Yeah, does Braverman want to keep Sunak on side? Because she started what's clearly a leadership bid, and it's almost goading him. Are you going to sack me? Am I more dangerous to you outside the tent, not at the cabinet table? Because it's not just the march. You've got to think he's disowned her comments on multiculturalism after her speech at the Tory party conference. A lot of people were very concerned when she said rough sleeping was a lifestyle choice, and indicated that in the King's speeches now. Giving tents to homeless people was going to be banned. It wasn't there. So it's a wider front. Look, you can't control her. Now, I think debates and people appealing to different parts of the party, the country, is what political parties need to do, but not when you have somebody in a key post in open revolt. You as Prime Minister just look weak.
I mean, I know you're very suspicious of Michael Gove, but publicly, he's one of the few cabinet ministers actually defended Suella Braverman at this stage.
Oh, of course he does, because he wouldn't want any
and
very clever, very clever.
And the thing is, even the people within the conspiracy, as you see it, who may not like Suella Braverman, they may calculate that in political terms, you may well be right, that actually keeping her within the party, given the mood of the party at the moment, is maybe the best thing to do to keep their core vote together. And also, incidentally, may actually slow down her ambitions to become leader, because if she were to become a martyr, that would, immediately she'd have nothing else to do but actually start building her campaign to be the next Conservative leader. And so actually keeping her within the government may actually be an inconvenience for her.
And I think that's more likely what will happen. So, she played a very strong hand to get her job as Home Secretary. So that Sunday night when Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson met, if you remember, when Liz Truss fell, so Suella had asked Boris to make her Home Secretary and she would back him if he did, and he said no, he wasn't doing bargains with anyone. She asked Rishi promised her Home Secretary if she backed him. And so she played a very key role in making sure that she was that he got there, because she brought this kind of the right of the party with her. So she probably feels that Rishi owes her, because she was key to getting him in as Prime Minister, and that is possibly that deal making that happened at that time is possibly something Rishi doesn't want to be out there, and she's using as her leverage.
Let's remember that was a week after she'd been sacked by Liz Truss when Prime Minister for breaching security. Then a week later, she gets the job.
To an aide from
she gets the job back because she's done. You see, a strong hand. It was a dodgy deal with Sunak, so Sunak could avoid
and it's
an election.
detailed in my book.
No, but the other point, of course, is that in terms of ideology, in terms of politics, all the signs are that actually Rishi Sunak is quite close to Suella Braverman's position on the marches. I mean, he has said that he's going to hold the police to account for what's gone. He said that his preference...
Yeah, but is he and has he? Or were they just words that, were politically...
But she overstepped him. That's true. That's true, Adam. He didn't want the march to go ahead, but he did not accuse the Metropolitan Police of somehow being soft on this march, but tough on football hooligans.
But that's just because it's so difficult for the Prime Minister to do that as the Commander-in-Chief. I mean, it's also difficult
and legislation doesn't support him.
Well, it doesn't support it for her, but she says it.
But also, it's fundamentally anti-Conservative, in my view at least, to be banning protests, to be clamping down on freedom of speech. And what Suella is doing is enabling the Conservative Party to look as though they're deeply uncomfortable with this, without actually materially changing anything, without doing anything of any practical significance.
Yeah, she wanted to browbeat the Metropolitan Police Commissioner into going against the law. That's what she wanted. She wanted political policing, operational.
She's a different
type.
type.
Former Home Secretary Priti Patel has actually come out and attacked her for it today, because the legislative framework enabled to instruct the Metropolitan Police in an operational capacity just isn't there.
What do you think? And what do you think about this?
So it's a difficult situation for me, because I very much support the whole freedom of speech. I think it should be everybody's right to protest peacefully. But I think it's a mark of disrespect to do that on Armistice Day, and I would rather the march wasn't take place on Saturday. But I would just rather, out of respect, the pro-Palestinian marchers said, we value the right that in this country we have the freedom to do this, but we're going to respect the fact that this is Remembered Sunday. And wait.
It's not Remembered Sunday, it's Armistice Day.
Armistice Day, yeah.
I can't see what's more appropriate than calling for an armistice on Armistice Day. They're going nowhere near to the cenotaph. It's not at 11 o'clock, it's in the afternoon. If you think it's disrespectful, do you also think it's respectful for people to go to the pub and get really drunk? Or people to go dancing, go to music,
go
shopping?
Should football matches take place?
The Lord Mayor's show is taking place on Saturday morning, which is basically a party to celebrate the Lord Mayor of London. It involves shutting down central London. It's a very upbeat thing. Should that go ahead?
Yeah, no, God, don't ask me. I'm not even an MP anymore. What do I know? What say do I have? But no, it's one to be debated, isn't it? And I think it's one that will go round and round in circles. I think people should have the right to protest. That's what this country stands for freedom and liberty, and to be able to say what you want to say as long as you're not inciting hatred.
Do you think the police have been guilty of double standards in their attitude?
Oh, I think there's no doubt, and I think the public absolutely agree that the wokery which has infected the police force. Now, I heard a really startling comment from a young woman just recently, and it wasn't even after the Sarah Everard matter, it was just recently, so time has passed. And she said she would feel unsafe and vulnerable if late at night in London she had to call for the police. And I thought, wow, that would, me growing up, the person you went to protect you and for security, and if you needed to, would be to the police. And there was a young woman in London who'd moved to London who said she would rather try and struggle herself than phone for the police. I think the Met Police are not in a good place.
It's not
for
wokery.
many reasons, whether it's racism, it's police officers sexting pictures to each other, it's with some of the stuff that we've seen over this week and at previous times, and so I think there is a problem.
But I mean, Black
with
Lives
how they
Matter. Do you think
function.
they were more tolerant of Black Lives Matter than they've been in the Palestinian?
I mean, that's not a discussion for today. I'm not going to go down.
There was a
that
lot of
path.
arrests by the Met. I can't see where the wokery is here.
Well,
actually.
you might
What
not,
about their
Kevin, but a lot of the
response to
country and a
chants
lot
of
of people
jihad?
do.
What about their response to
the-
chants of jihad being a semantic one?
You can pick that, and I think there's a legitimate debate around that. And should they have acted those isolated chants? Because it's not a hate march, as Braverman says. I don't think anyone here would think she's correct on that. She's stirring up division. She's trying to incite far-right groups. If there's going to be any disorder on Saturday...
Is she trying to incite far-right groups?
By
What is the
saying-
evidence for that?
By saying the police are softer on pro-Palestinian marches than they are on... She mentioned football. Well, I think what she means are ADL and other violent far-right groups who go looking for disorder.
Well, she actually did compare it to the way they handle the far-right groups like the EDL.
Yeah, and do you know what? So isn't the fundamental point here is there was a whole other way of going about this. If there was a problem, and we've seen the public backlash coming in, a lot of the public are saying, we support Suella, she's speaking for us. Wasn't there just, as Home Secretary, a cleverer way to go about this? Shouldn't it be in a discussion with the Met Police and said, these are the isolated incidents, this is not good, you need to go about this in a better way. Isn't it, we need to have these discussions around, there's always a threat of the lever, isn't there? We'll take operational independence away from you. Shouldn't it just have been handled better and in a different way?
But when you look at how she's behaved, what do you think her game is?
So I have said this before. I think Suella's in a win-win situation. If he sacks her, she becomes a martyr to the right of the party. And if she stays, she continues one of the 4 high offices of state where she continues to use as a platform to express her views and to continue, as you said, to use that as the basis to launch a future. So Suella is in a win-win situation.
So Sunak's in a lose-lose.
So Sunak's going to go anyway. They're going to get rid of him. If he doesn't lose at a general... I don't even think he's going to get to a general election. We are 25 points behind Labour today. I don't think they're going to let him continue. These people around him, all they want is power. All they're interested in is power. And the thought of Rishi Sunak losing, they will try any dice.
Yeah, you said they wanted their candidate. Who do you think their candidate is?
Their candidate is Kemi Badenoch. They've been grooming her for years.
Kemi
She's been
Badenoch.
very close friends with Dougie Smith and the cohorts and Michael Gove. While Dougie Smith was looking after Rishi, his wife Munira, Boris's former policy advisor, was writing Kemi's speeches at the leadership hustings with Liz Truss. That's their candidate. They're not going to let anyone stand in the way of Kemi taking over.
What about
from
James
Rishi.
Cleverly? He's very popular.
So James Cleverly really wants to watch his back because just like Ben Wallace, just like Dominic Raab, because he's now a favourite, the negative briefings will start about James Cleverly very soon.
But I do think that
And he's
context
a lovely man. He's a very kind, lovely man. And that would be absolutely wrong because there's not a bad bone in James's body. But he really needs